I stood in the shadowed corner of that hotel ballroom, watching my family laugh and talk like they belonged to something I never would. Yesterday, I had convinced myself this time would be different, that maybe my father would finally look at me with something other than disappointment. But he had just said something that made the entire room fall silent. Those words were still echoing in my head. The mistake we kept. My legs felt weak, my chest tight, but the decision had already crystallized in my mind. I had exactly 60 seconds to decide if I would stay and pretend it did not destroy me or walk away from these people forever. Before I tell you what I did next, I want to know where are you watching from. Drop your location in the comments. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like button. You are not alone. Subscribe because this story gets darker before it gets better, and you will want to see how I took my power back. Let me take you back to where it all started 3 weeks before that reunion. I was 28 years old when my father called me for the reunion. I had been living in Seattle for 6 years by then, working as a mid-level software engineer at a tech company downtown. My apartment was a small studio, nothing fancy, just enough space for one person who had learned to be comfortable alone. The television stayed on most evenings just to create background noise filling the silence that otherwise pressed too heavily against my thoughts. My family and I did not talk often. Maybe a phone call every few months on birthdays or holidays exchanges that felt more like obligations than connections. I had taught myself not to need their approval, but somewhere deep inside that old wound still ached. My father, Richard, was 62 years old, a retired Air Force colonel with a rigid spine and eyes that rarely softened. He had built his life on discipline and control, and emotion was something he considered weakness. My mother, Barbara, was 59, a homemaker, who had spent decades smoothing over his sharp edges, always quiet when his words cut too deep. Then there was my older brother Derek, 33, a successful attorney with a wife named Amy and 2 young children. Derek was everything my father wanted in a son. I was the youngest, the one they had not planned for the accident that arrived 5 years after they thought they were done having children. When my father called 3 weeks before the reunion, his voice carried none of its usual coldness, but it was not warm either. It sat somewhere in that neutral zone that made it impossible to read his intentions. "The whole family will be there," he said. "Your cousins, your aunts, uncles. It is time we all got together." I remember holding the phone, surprised he had been the one to reach out. Usually, my mother sent gentle reminders about family events, her way of keeping me tethered to people who had never quite made room for me. But this was different. He initiated it. Maybe he is getting older, I thought. Maybe he wants to fix things. I booked a flight to Phoenix the next day. I bought a new suit, charcoal gray with a navy blue tie, wanting to look the professional, put together someone they could be proud of. I rehearsed things I might say about my work achievements I could share if anyone asked. This time I will make him proud, I told myself. This time will be different. The flight from Seattle took 2 hours. I sat by the window watching snow-capped mountains give way to desert landscape, and my mind drifted back through memories I had tried to bury. My high school graduation, where my father attended, only because Derek was giving the valedictorian speech, and he never took a single photo with me. Family dinners where I tried to contribute to conversations only to be talked over or ignored. Birthdays where gifts arrived late or not at all. But I pushed those thoughts away. That was 10 years ago. People change. Maybe he has changed. I rented a car at the airport and drove through familiar Phoenix streets, the heat radiating off the pavement, even though it was late afternoon. I did not go to my parents' house. I had learned a long time ago that staying under his roof meant playing by his rules, and I needed my own space. I booked a room at the Hilton downtown, the same hotel where the reunion would be held. My room was on the 12th floor with a view of the city stretched out under the harsh Arizona sun. I unpacked carefully, hanging the new suit in the closet, laying out my shoes, making sure everything was perfect. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Cannot wait to see you tomorrow, sweetie," followed by a heart emoji. Then one from Derek. "Do not be late. Dad is already stressed about the catering." I replied to both with polite, non-committal responses, the kind that kept peace without promising anything real. That night I lay in the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. I opened my laptop and checked work emails, trying to distract myself from the anxiety building in my chest. The air conditioning hummed, and outside the lights of Phoenix glowed against the dark sky. I finally turned off the lamp just after midnight, but sleep came in restless fragments. Tomorrow, I kept thinking. Tomorrow I will finally fit in. I woke at 7 in the morning and went through my routine with deliberate care. I showered, shaved, combed my hair until every strand sat exactly right. I put on the suit, adjusted the tie 3 times, and stood in front of the mirror. "You look good," I told myself. Confident, successful. But my hands trembled slightly as I tightened the knot at my throat. The reunion started at 11 in the morning in the hotel ballroom 1 floor below mine. I arrived early 10:30, thinking I could ease into the crowd before everyone gathered. The ballroom was already filling with relatives I had not seen in years. Aunts and uncles milled around at tables draped in white cloth. Cousins stood in clusters catching up on years of missed conversations. A few people noticed me and offered surface-level greetings. "Oh, Marion, it has been so long. How are you?" Their eyes would drift away even as I answered, already searching for someone more interesting to talk to. Derek arrived with his family shortly after, and the room shifted its attention. Everyone gravitated toward him, complimenting Amy's dress, cooing over the children, asking Derek about his latest case. He glanced at me across the room and gave a single nod. "Hey, you made it." No hug, no warmth, just acknowledgement that I had shown up. My stomach tightened, but I forced a smile. Then my parents entered. My mother saw me and hurried over, wrapping me in a hug that felt genuine, even if brief. "Oh, honey, you look so handsome," she said, stepping back to look at me. My father stood a few steps behind her, hands in his pockets, and gave me a curt nod. "Marion. Just my name. Nothing else." I swallowed the disappointment rising in my throat. "Hi, Dad. Thanks for inviting me." His response was flat. "Well, it is a family event." The way he said family event, like I was just another name on a guest list, like I was obligatory rather than wanted, that first crack appeared in the hope I had been carrying. But I told myself to stay patient. Maybe he will warm up later. Lunch was served buffet style, and I stood in line watching people load their plates with catered food. I found a seat at a table near the back where my cousin Jake, a 35-year-old mechanic, was sitting. We made small talk. He asked about Seattle, about my job, and I told him about working in tech, about the projects I managed. "That is cool, man," he said. "I could never do that computer stuff." Then he turned to someone else, and I was left alone again with my plate of food I could barely taste. Across the room, Derek stood at the center of attention, telling a story about a recent legal case. People laughed, leaned in, hung on his words. My father stood beside him, one hand resting on Derek's shoulder, smiling in a way I had never seen him smile at me. Pride. Pure, uncomplicated pride. I looked away, focusing on my plate, trying to ignore the hollow feeling spreading through my chest. I had never seen Dad smile like that at me. Not once. I tried to join the conversation when I walked over to Derek's group, attempted to add something relevant about logic problems in my field. Actually, in my field, we deal with similar logic problems. My father cut me off before I could finish. Derek was talking. The words were sharp, dismissive, and the group fell into uncomfortable silence. I stepped back, retreating to the edge of the room, holding a glass of water, just to have something in my hands. Around 1:30 in the afternoon, my father tapped a spoon against his glass, calling for everyone's attention. The room quieted. Faces turned toward him. "I want to thank everyone for coming today." He began, his voice carrying that authoritative tone he had perfected over decades in the military. He spoke about family values, about tradition, about how proud he was of what we had built together. "I am proud of this family. Proud of what we have accomplished." I stood near the wall, hoping he might acknowledge everyone might find a way to include me in that pride. He continued, "I want to introduce you all to my family up here. Come on up." My mother joined him first, standing beside him as he put his arm around her. My wonderful wife, Barbara, who has been by my side for 35 years. Then Derek. My son Derek, a brilliant attorney making a real difference in this world. Derek's wife and children joined them, a perfect picture of success and belonging. Then my father paused, scanning the room. "And where is Marion?" My heart jumped. I stepped out from the shadows, my legs unsteady, and walked toward the front. Every eye in the room followed me. "Come on up here," he said. I climbed the 2 steps to the small platform where they stood, positioning myself beside him. He placed his hand on my shoulder, and for one brief second I thought this was it. He was going to say something kind, something that would heal years of feeling invisible. "This is Marion, my youngest." He paused, and in that pause I felt hope flicker. Then he added in a tone that sounded almost casual, almost like a joke, but with an edge of truth that cut straight through me. "The mistake we kept." A few people laughed nervously. My Uncle Tim let out a loud guffaw. "Good one, Richard." But most of the room went silent, faces frozen in uncomfortable recognition of what had just happened. I looked at my mother. Her face showed shock, but she said nothing. Derek looked away, studying his phone suddenly. My father removed his hand from my shoulder and turned back to the crowd as if nothing had happened. "Anyway, let us enjoy the rest of the afternoon." I stood there, unable to move my ears, ringing the lights too bright. The room began to resume its conversations, people turning back to their tables, pretending they had not just witnessed something cruel. My father stepped down from the platform, already laughing with someone about the catering. My mother busied herself with the grandchildren. Derek typed something on his phone. Nobody was going to say anything. Nobody cared. I walked down from that platform on legs that barely held me, moving mechanically toward the exit. A few people called out, "Marion." "Where are you going?" I did not answer. I could not. I pushed through the ballroom doors and stepped into the hallway where the sounds of music and laughter faded behind me. I leaned against the wall, trying to breathe, trying to process what had just happened. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, not to call anyone, just to hold something solid. I pressed the elevator button and waited. A couple stepped in with me on the way up, smiling politely. I forced my face into something that might have looked like a smile and turned away. When they got off on the 5th floor, I finally let my shoulders sag. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the suit that suddenly felt too tight. I stared out the window at Phoenix spreading beneath the relentless sun. My phone started buzzing. Mom calling. I did not answer. Derek calling. I ignored it. The phone kept ringing messages piling up, but I could not bring myself to read them. I was done. That evening, I sat in the hotel room as the light outside shifted from harsh afternoon glare to the softer tones of sunset. My phone continued its relentless buzzing. 5 calls from my mother, 3 from Derek, even a few from cousins who suddenly cared enough to check in. A text from my mother appeared on the screen. "Honey, where did you go? Come back, we are worried." Another from Derek. "What is your problem?" "You are embarrassing Dad." I read them without responding. Each message felt like another weight pressing down, another attempt to pull me back into a dynamic where I would always be less than always be the mistake. I opened my laptop and navigated to the airline website. My original flight back to Seattle was scheduled for Sunday, 2 days away. I changed it to the last flight out tonight, 9:45 in the evening. The change fee was $150. I did not care. I packed quickly, shoving clothes into my suitcase without folding them, zipping it shut with a finality that felt right. I checked out of the hotel at 7 in the evening, returned the rental car at the airport, and sat in the terminal waiting for my flight. My phone kept buzzing. I opened my contacts and started blocking numbers. My father, block. My mother. I hesitated for just a moment before pressing block. Derek, block without a second thought. Aunts, uncles, cousins. I went through 15 contacts and blocked every single one. The flight home felt surreal. I sat by the window watching Phoenix's lights grow smaller and smaller until they disappeared entirely beneath the darkness. I felt nothing. Not sadness, not anger, just a vast emptiness that scared me more than any emotion could have. It was like watching myself from outside my body going through motions without feeling attached to any of them. Back in Seattle, just after midnight, I unlocked my apartment door and stood in the familiar space that suddenly felt different. The next morning, I called the Human Resources Department at work. "I need to request remote work or a transfer to another office," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Personal reasons." The woman on the other end was sympathetic. "We have an opening in Boston." "Would that work?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "When can I start 2 weeks?" Those 2 weeks became a blur of methodical action. I sold my furniture on Craigslist piece by piece, watching strangers cart away the couch, the desk, the bookshelf. I canceled my lease, paying the penalty fee without complaint. I packed what I needed into 2 suitcases, clothes and laptop, and a few personal items that mattered. Everything else went to Goodwill. I closed my local bank account and switched to online banking. I got a new phone number, deleted my minimal social media presence, created a new email address for personal use. I wanted to disappear. Not dramatically, just gone. I flew to Boston on a cold morning in early December 2 years ago from now. The city greeted me with gray skies and biting wind so different from Seattle's damp chill or Phoenix's dry heat. I rented a studio apartment in Jamaica Plain, a neighborhood where people kept to themselves and nobody asked questions you did not want to answer. It was small, affordable, anonymous. Perfect. My new job was the same company, different team, different projects. I met a coworker named Tony on my first day, a 42-year-old man who had been through a divorce and understood the need to start over. He did not pry into my past. Everyone has got their reasons, he said over coffee one afternoon, and that was enough. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects, staying late, making work my refuge from the thoughts that tried to creep in during quiet moments. The first year in Boston passed in a haze of routine. Work, gym, home, repeat. I did not date. I did not make close friends. It was enough just to exist without the weight of expectation, without wondering if I would ever be good enough. But slowly, gradually, things shifted. In my second year, I met Jade at a coffee shop near my apartment. She was 31, a graphic designer with an easy laugh and a respect for boundaries that felt like a gift. We started dating casually. Nothing rushed. Nothing forced. When she asked about my family, I said we were not close and she did not push. I also met Sam, a 26-year-old barista who became my gym buddy, someone who talked enough that I did not have to fill every silence. Healing happened in small increments I barely noticed. I woke up one morning and realized I had not thought about my family in 3 days, then a week, then longer. I got promoted to senior engineer. I felt proud of myself, genuinely proud without needing anyone's validation. For the first time in my life, I was just Marion. Not the mistake, not the youngest, not the disappointment. Just me. 2 years passed and I thought I was safe. I thought they had forgotten about me the way they always had. I should have known it would not last. It was a Saturday morning in early November present day when I heard the knock on my door. I was making coffee still in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, not expecting anyone. I opened the door to find a man in his 50s standing there, weathered face, wearing a suit that had seen better days. "Marion," he asked. "Who are you?" I responded, already feeling my defenses rise. "My name is Frank. I am a private investigator. Your family hired me to find you." Panic hit, first the instinct to slam the door and pretend this was not happening. But Frank held up his hands. "Wait. I just need to talk to you for 5 minutes. How did you find me?" I asked, my voice harder than I intended. "Employment records," he said, "cross-referenced with rental addresses. Took me 4 months, but here we are." He held out an envelope. "They asked me to give you this." I stared at the envelope without taking it. Frank continued. "They want to see you. They said they are sorry." I let out a laugh that held no humor. "Sorry," Frank shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I am just the messenger, but they are insistent. They want you at Thanksgiving dinner next week." "No," I said flatly. "They said you would say that. They are willing to come here if you prefer." I looked at Frank and something in me settled into a calm I had not felt in years. "You can tell them I got their message, and you can tell them I am not interested." Frank frowned. "They paid me good money to find you." "They care. If they cared," I said, voice steady and clear, "they would not have waited 2 years. If they cared, they would not have needed a private investigator." I reached out and pushed the envelope back toward him. "I do not need to read it. Tell them I have moved on. Tell them I am fine without them." "Are you sure about this?" Frank asked. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." Frank left, and I closed the door behind him. I stood in my apartment, hands still trembling slightly, but not from fear. From adrenaline. From the power of standing my ground. I did it. I stood my ground. The envelope sat on my table where Frank had left it despite my refusal. I looked at it for a long moment, then picked it up. I did not open it. I tore it in half and threw it in the trash. I did not need closure from them. I had already found it. I called Jade. "A private investigator just showed up at my door," I said. "Holy shit," she responded. "What did you say?" I said no. "Good," she said without hesitation. "You do not owe them anything." Hearing her support feeling understood even without knowing the full story that meant everything. She did not know the whole story, but she knew enough. And she had my back. That afternoon, I walked along the Charles River watching yellow leaves drift down from the trees, feeling the cold November air on my face. I felt lighter. The weight I had carried for 28 years, the desperate need for approval, for belonging, for love from people incapable of giving it, it was gone. Not because they apologized, but because I chose to let it go. A week later, I spent a Thanksgiving with Jade and her family. Her parents welcomed me into their home without interrogation, without judgment. The dinner was simple, loud, full of genuine laughter. I sat at their table and thought this is what family should feel like. Not perfect, but real. I started seeing a therapist a month after Frank's visit. Her name was Dr. Helen, a 60-year-old woman with kind eyes who listened without interrupting. In our first session, I told her about the reunion, about being called the mistake in front of everyone. "That must have been devastating," she said softly. "It was," I replied, "but I survived." Over months of sessions, I began to understand that my father's cruelty was never about me. It was about his own inability to love his own damage that he passed down like a bitter inheritance. His words reflected his limitations, not my worth. I joined a running club and made friends who knew nothing about my past. I got promoted to lead engineer. I bought a one-bedroom apartment, bigger and brighter than the studio, with windows that let in morning light. Each step forward was proof that I was building a life worth living, a life I was proud of. 6 months after Frank's visit, another letter arrived. They had somehow found my new address. I looked at it and felt nothing. No panic, no anger, just a mild curiosity. I opened it this time. It was from my mother, her handwriting shaky, explaining that my father had health issues and wanted to make amends. I read it twice and still felt nothing. They were strangers now, and I was okay with that. I did not reply. I filed it away in a drawer and went about my day. Now, at 30 years old, I sit in my apartment on a Saturday morning with coffee in hand and sunlight streaming through the windows. I think about the journey from that ballroom in Phoenix to this moment, from being called the mistake to becoming someone who knows his own worth. I learned things I wish I had known earlier, lessons that came at a high cost, but shaped who I am now. You cannot make someone love you, and you should not have to. I spent years trying to earn my father's approval, twisting myself into shapes that never fit, hoping that one day he would see me the way he saw Derek. But some people are incapable of giving what you need, and no amount of effort will change that. Family is who shows up, not who shares your blood. Jade, Sam, Tony. Dr. Helen Jade's parents. These are the people who became my real family. They chose to be there, chose to care, and that choice means everything. Walking away is not weakness. It is self-preservation. Society tells us to forgive, to reconcile, to keep trying. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to cut the ties that are strangling you. Your worth is not determined by how others see you. I am not the mistake. I am a person with value, with talents, with a life that matters. It took me leaving everything behind to learn that, but it was worth it. I do not hate my father now. I do not wish bad things for him. I simply feel nothing, and that indifference is its own kind of freedom. I let him go, and in doing so, I set myself free. Looking forward, I see possibilities. Maybe marriage with Jade someday, maybe not. A manager role at work in a few years. A trip to Europe with Sam next summer. A life full of choices that are mine to make without anyone telling me I was a mistake to begin with. I used to think I needed them to be whole. Turns out I just needed me. If you are listening to this and you have felt invisible, unwanted, like you do not belong, I see you. I know what it is like to wait for someone to choose you, to validate you, to tell you that you matter. But here is what I learned. You have to choose yourself first. You have to be the one who decides you are worthy, because waiting for someone else to do it might mean waiting forever. Maybe your story is different. Maybe your family did apologize and you chose to forgive. That is okay too. There is no single right way to heal. But if you chose to walk away to build something new without looking back, know that you are not alone. Know that healing does not always mean going back. Sometimes it means moving forward into something better. My life is not perfect now. I still have hard days. I still wonder sometimes if things could have been different, but my life is mine. For the first time in 30 years, I am living for myself, and that is enough. That is more than enough. Will I ever see them again? I do not know. Do I need to know? And that is the real freedom, knowing I will be okay either way. Knowing that my happiness does not depend on their approval anymore. Knowing that I am enough exactly as I am. Life goes on, and so do I. If this story resonated with you, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from family? How did you find the strength to choose yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who is still waiting for approval that might never come share this video with them, hit that like button if you believe that choosing yourself is not selfish, it is survival. Subscribe to this channel because I will keep sharing stories about finding strength in the hardest moments, about building a life that is true to who you are. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope wherever you are, you know that you deserve love, respect, and a family that sees your worth. If you have not found that yet, keep looking. Keep building. You are worth it. Take care of yourselves out there and remember that walking away from what hurts you is the first step toward finding what heals you.